We'll get started and call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone here this evening. Shannon, Joe just showed me a text. Be a little bit late. She's doing the food thing, and they're trying to close that out. Glenn was not feeling good yesterday, so he said he would not be here tonight. He was going to go and be tested, but he called, so I've had no contact, direct contact with him. So we'll move on. First thing on the agenda this evening is Little River Park, and with us is Elizabeth Gardner with Whitewater Park Committee, LLC, I think it is, and I believe y'all are a subset of the Carolina Canoe Club. Is that correct or not?
We're really our own thing. We
Okay.
have some members that are on the Carolina Canoe Club, but
Okay.
we are our own
Well, I wasn't
separate
sure, and
entity.
so, anyway, we'll move forward. Elizabeth's going to talk to us about a proposal for some things down at Little River Park, so the floor is yours.
No, excuse me, can I interrupt? We need to approve the agenda,
I'm
please.
sorry. We need to approve the agenda. Gotten ahead of myself.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. Now it's yours.
All right. I know it's hard to say with who. Who am I with? Today I was speaking. Technically, our 501c3, our nonprofit, is Falls Whitewater Park Committee. We started working on a whitewater park at the base of Falls Dam many, many years ago. It's kind of embarrassing how many years ago it was. But it all started when my husband and I went to Colorado, and we visited Clear Creek Whitewater Park, and it was the neatest thing that we'd ever seen. Now, we're whitewater kayakers, and there is some whitewater paddling right here. So as a matter of fact, the Haw River over in Chatham County was running this weekend because we had enough rain for it. So we do have some rain-dependent whitewater around here, and because of that, we actually have a pretty big whitewater community. And the Carolina Canoe Club, which is a statewide organization, is actually based here in the Triangle. So there's a lot of interest in whitewater here. We have over in Durham County, there's the Eno and the Flat and the Little that run when we have rainfall as well. So we thought, gosh, wouldn't it be neat to have something like this at Falls Dam? So we've been working with the city of Raleigh to try to build that for a number of years. And in that process, I've learned a lot about whitewater parks. So when the mayor contacted us and said we were interested in what the feasibility of this is, I said, wow, yes, this is fantastic. In the middle of August, we went over and took a look at the site, and it looks perfect. I'm speaking to you from just solely a volunteer's perspective, somebody who's been, working at this from the volunteer and just a citizen for a long, long time. But I've worked, fairly closely with the Whitewater Park designers as we went through a year-long feasibility study with Mclaughlin Whitewater Group, and those are the designers, those are the Whitewater engineers. And we did that through the City of Raleigh Parks and Rec back in 2012. So again, it's been a long time. It was even longer than that, actually. I'm pretty familiar with how they're built and how the process goes. And I apologize because I had a nice slideshow that has lots of pictures of whitewater parks from across the country, sort of what the process is to get one of these built. But I will send that to the mayor, and he will forward it to all of you so that you can see the slides. It's better if I can explain them in person, but we'll just sort of talk about what's happening. So when we went to see the site, the day that we were there, I went back and I looked at the gauge. There's actually a river gauge for the Little River that is in Zebulon, and it was fairly high flow that day. One thing that we're used to here, all whitewater paddlers are used to all the whitewater around here being rain dependent. So when we look at flows for where we'll actually have whitewater paddling at that site, it may come up as something like 60 days, which is what we were looking at Falls Dam. And people might say, wait a minute, that doesn't seem like very much. But you have to remember that whitewater paddlers are only a small fraction of the people that will use this. Now, while we call it a whitewater park and the sign there, shows a whitewater kayaker, tubers, swimmers, spectators, fishermen, just all sorts of people come. That was the thing about this park. It has a greenway that runs right beside it. On the other side of the greenway was a ball field and a restroom and a playground. And this was just such a central part of the town of Golden. It's in Golden, which is a suburb of Denver. So they draw a lot of people from Denver to come to this park. And it's snowmelt dependent. And so they have 2 or 3 months out of the year where they have enough water for whitewater. And you know, so much of the year it's in Colorado. Nobody's getting in that water except for, about 3 months of the year, June, July, and August, maybe a little bit into September. But they still felt like it was worthwhile. And that park brings in about $1 million in economic impact every year. So they are viable. We have whitewater parks all across the country. Some of you may have heard of the Charlotte Whitewater Park. And you may think, well, this doesn't seem anything like Charlotte. So Charlotte's Whitewater Park is completely man-made. So it is I don't mean to sound, I think it's great, but it's a concrete ditch with water in it. And so it always has whitewater. It flows, every day that they intend to run it. But it's a completely different thing. So this is going to be more like an old-fashioned swimming hole. It's sort of like that right now. But when you go in and you tweak it and create nice waves and add rocks in the right places, it becomes a really, really nice place for people to gather, picnic, watch what's happening, tubing, as long as, we have a nice long summer. So, there would be tubing in it, all year or as many months as anybody would want to get in the water. So we have multiple users for these whitewater parks. And even though, again, you think of a whitewater park, there's going to be whitewater paddling, and there will be, but those days will be limited. And the time when you have tubers and swimmers and, kids playing and that sort of thing will be, all summer long. So you may say, well, what in the world is a whitewater park? So I really like this video. It's really short. It's only about a minute long. But there's one of the park's board members in Golden talks a little bit, and then there's a girl who is a whitewater park user, and they both talk a little bit. Otherwise, it's really just for you to see what a whitewater park looks like.
Originally, when the Whitewater Park was designed, this was a neglected creek corridor. Now we've been able to design all sorts of recreation features that brings everyone downtown.
And that's what I love. You get all these people sitting by the river, dangling their feet in the water. You get fishermen, you get tubers.
We were thinking we were building this for paddles. What we have found is the Whitewater Park is now being used by tubers, canoers, kayakers, swimmers, families taking picnics, people just walking out. It's a great place for lunch.
It's fun. I know like a 6-year-old who does this and he enjoys it a lot. I've got my friends in it before and they all love it. They've asked me to come paddle with them again. So I mean, it's for everyone.
The Golden Whitewater Park and River Corridor is a break from the city. On a hot day, this is a great place to hang out.
So that gives you sort of an idea of what it looks like. So it looks very natural. It looks like nobody has really engineered the river very much. There are boulders that are brought in a lot of these parks to constrict the flow to make the water move faster, to develop the waves. But what you have at the Little River Park is already a really nice bedrock drop with the old dam there. That is already broken out. So you already have a nice constriction of flow. The Whitewater Park designers will go in and tweak it even more to make it a really nice wave for kayakers to do tricks on. It's a little bit like a skate park. So you have all, the ramps and the quarter pipe and this and that and the other thing. So they'll design it so that it's a wave that's surfable. And that, again, will happen, X number of days per year. And then beyond that, you've got a great place for people to swim and tube. And there are actually 2 features there. I don't know if you've all been, I assume you've probably all been there before. But you have the dam, and then when you walk upstream, you have that really nice second bedrock rapid. So you've got two really nice places to play there. The process for this starts with, and again, I apologize because I had a nice long list of how the whole process goes in my slideshow. But picking a site, and we have the site picked already. Then you talk about a feasibility study. So the company that I highly recommend that we would use in Raleigh is Mclaughlin Whitewater. They designed the first in-stream whitewater park in the country. There are some that are like Charlotte that are just completely man-made. But these are in-stream, and so they look really natural, and again, it feels like an old-fashioned swimming hole. So they would come and they would do a feasibility study. And so that's going to give you sort of a ballpark cost estimate. It's going to give you some preliminary drawings of what it looks like and that sort of thing. And so that is a next step versus, if everybody is all on board and you're like, yes, we want to do this yesterday, you can also have them come and do a preliminary design. And that just gets into a little more nitty gritty and gets you ready for permitting and that sort of thing. So these typically have to be permitted. We talked a lot about permitting over on the Neuse in Raleigh. And there are a number of permits that you would have to get. The few things that you'll have to consider is, Fish and Wildlife will, want to look at, what are the migratory fish that come up the Little River and how does this affect them? But the thing about it is you already have a dam there and a big natural bedrock drop. So, it's not something that shad are going to jump up anyway. So for so many reasons, it's a really nice location. The permitting, from my experience working with the site at Falls Dam, looks much simpler here than it does there. You've just got a lot of features that are just kind of sitting there ready to go. So, questions?
Question? Anybody have any questions?
What's the cost of a feasibility study? Any idea?
Yes, the feasibility study is $10,000 to $20,000. They just gave me a slide. Mclaughlin gave me a slide. Here's the difference between the feasibility study and the preliminary design. And I'll send it to you. And there's a whole list of here's what you get with the feasibility study. Here's what you get with the preliminary design. So you'll get to look at it. But the preliminary design is 50 to 100. The feasibility is 10 to 20.
Other questions? Might add in that SIG came down from Wake County and is very interested in working with us through the county. I know his decision is not just his alone, and I understand that, but he's still very interested in it. And you might want to introduce Hill.
Yep, Hill's here. This is Hill Cara with Sports and Properties, and he's been working with us on the project in Raleigh for a while as well. So thanks for being here, Hill.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you. We'll take it under consideration. If we have any more questions, we'll get with you, and probably be our recreation department, but nonetheless,
Great.
we'll follow up with you. So thank you for coming down tonight.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having
it very
us.
much. Okay. Okay, go to old business, Parks and Recreation Master Plan update.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. This evening, we have with us Withers Ravenel to provide an update with you about the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So we had hoped to have been completed with this process by now, but COVID kind of put a halt on this project, but we are looking to move forward with public engagement. So we restarted those efforts this week. We are going to be learning as we go. That was something that we talked with Withers about this evening, that things that worked pre-COVID are not going to work now, but we're wanted to kind of gauge what our community was comfortable with. So we'll be adapting in the coming weeks to do the best we can to get our community's input as we move forward. So with that said, I'm excited to introduce Gary to you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Gary Warner. I'm a landscape architect with Withers Ravenel, and we've been working on the Play Zebulon project, the Parks Recreation Master Plan for the town. So we have a brief little update. Essentially, we're looking at a system. We're looking at your Parks Recreation system as a whole to really understand the operations of it and what you have out there in inventory, and where we can start to build this plan into the future for the next 10 years or maybe even more. So traditionally, these plans are updated every 10 years. So essentially, we're looking at a 10-year plan. But occasionally, things come out of it that look beyond the 10-year plan. And maybe a whitewater park could be one of those things that we'll have to talk to Ms. Gardner about that as we move forward. But the idea is that we start to look at a comprehensive approach to the plan. We start to get a community vision for that, talking to stakeholders and to the general public in terms of what they like to see in a parks recreation system. And then we look at trying to figure out a way to implement it as we move forward. So we're here to give you a brief little update on that. So we have a team that's put together to provide expertise in terms of community engagement and look at a financial plan, a financial package, how we help pay for these kind of improvements out there, and also look at staffing and operations for the Parks Recreation Department. So through the process, we started the process. As Sheila had mentioned, we came to a kind of a screeching halt in our community engagement because of COVID. But now we're starting to re-engage people and the process. Before this started, we had an open house and done some surveys out there. And so we've been doing inventories of the park systems. We've been talking to staff. We've been doing mail surveys and online surveys, start to gather data a couple different ways so that we can start to figure out where we are. So as you can see on the screen, we're in the middle of the community needs assessment, and then we'll talk about what the next steps are as we start to move forward. So we spent some time walking the parks, looking at the system, looking at your inventory, doing an evaluation. We've sat with staff and talked about the program and operations of those kind of things, and we're starting to look at your system compared to standards, whether they're national standards or state standards, just to see how you compare out there. And we're also looking at other communities and seeing how you compare to other communities in terms of functions, operations, and costs. So like I mentioned, we're looking at the whole system. We're looking at your greenways and trails plan, because that's all part of the system, in addition to the additional parks. And we look at the city as a whole, town as a whole, and so we can start to see where we need to enhance existing parks to provide additional programs, or where we need to provide new parks to provide access for new residential development or new things that are happening across the city, across the town. So far in our community needs assessment, we've been doing our demographic research, looking at the trends on there. We have an online survey going on right now, and we've had over 350 people have participated in that. We've done a mail survey. We had 178 responses to the mail survey, so it's a statistically valid survey for research purposes. And we continue to have focus group meetings. We have staff interviews, and we were at the pop-up market this evening at special events, and we will be out at the park next Saturday, I believe, or first Saturday in October, to see, to capture some ideas from the community to talk about their park system. But the idea through the community engagement that we realized in order to make this work is you really need to make it fun and social. And it really needs to be meaningful. So we have a bunch of different tools that I talked about that really start to make it meaningful, and people start to get involved and interactive with the process. The kind of things we're looking to figure out is, what are your expectations as a resident here? What are your expectations as you're bringing your kids to the park? What kind of programs is the town not providing or need to provide additionally into what's out there. Where do you think the park system wants to be? These become quality of life issues in terms of how people and why people want to move to Zebulon or come back to Zebulon to raise their families, because you have a good park system, good quality of life issues that are out there. So that's kind of where we are at this point. So next steps are essentially, our online engagement is returning. It is coming back. We have some ideas about how we reach out and do some additional things for that. The online survey is still going. You are on the next steps. You will be contacted by one of my colleagues probably next week to schedule a one-on-one interview with you so that we can pick your brain a little bit about what you think about the park system and the Parks and Recreations program itself. So like I mentioned, one of my colleagues will reach out to you next week, probably via email. We'll set up a time with you to chat with you one-on-one, probably just be a telephone interview, half hour, 45 minutes. Sometimes if you have a lot to say, it can go longer, but we'll send you a set of questions up front so you can start thinking about it a few days in advance, some of the questions we want to ask you, but you can expect that phone call or that email next week to get you involved, and we encourage you to spread the word about the project because we continue to get community engagement. So once we have engagement, once we hear what people have to say, then we start to figure out where we want to go. What is the vision for the park system? How many new parks are we going to build? Are we going to build new facilities? Are we going to build a whitewater park, right? And so we start to figure out what the big ideas are, what our recommendations are going to be, and we'll sit down with staff and talk about the vision for the system. At that point, we'll also start to figure out how we implement these things, because a whitewater park is not inexpensive. If you need a new community center, that's not inexpensive, but if you're doing playground upgrades or adding a skate park or adding new greenways and trails, we'll help you try to figure out how do you implement these things over the next 3, 5, 10 years. So that's part of the process. We don't want the plan to sit on the shelf, right? We want to see this thing implemented. So that's how we start to move forward. There are grants out there we can help you go get for these kind of things, but you got to have a plan in place for that. So we'll sit down and have an implementation workshop with you. We'll start to look at the financial plan, how we pay for it. We'll look at impact fees and analysis and all that kind of good things through as we start to move forward with the project. So with that, that's my very brief summary. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Right. Guess not. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much. Look forward to speaking to you about the project.
Thank you. Okay, water merger agreement update and discussion.
Good evening. We won't keep you long. Mike and I are just really here tonight to answer some questions from last month's work session that y'all had for us that we didn't have answers for at the time. So I think it's really about 4 or 5 questions. One, I think we were talking about the large amount of past due balances and how they were not disconnected for non-payment at the time. You were asking, was there a grace period for the payment plans once those are started? And the answer was yes, they're going to give 12 months to satisfy those past due balances. The executive order requires 6 months, but they're going to do 12. And then the little chart I had with the past due balances and the amount of past due accounts and their average balance, I was asked, could they create, or did they have prior to COVID stuff? They did not, because they basically created that report back in April. So, and they couldn't. They said they had to break the system to do that, so they couldn't go backwards. What would be the cost to buy back capacity outside the merger window? They could not really give an answer right now. It's really unknown. It's a complex calculation that have to be done. They said it would be somewhere in between original cost, less depreciation, and replacement cost. So doesn't really answer your question, but it'll take a while to answer that question. Should we come to need to buy additional. One thing they mentioned before, and I just wanted to share it again. This wasn't a question, but this is just a little a nugget for you. They have an open invitation to all elected officials of the merger communities to come and tour any of their plants, the water plant, sewer plant, E.M. Johnson, Benson, whichever. So if anybody's interested in that, just get with me and we can line up something within a time that will work.
I would add, Bob, at that point, I've actually been in all those plants. It's pretty darn interesting if you would, like to see what goes on, because compared to our little water plant down here, it's a monster. So anyway, I just throw that in. It's probably worthwhile to do.
So if anybody's interested, just maybe let Joe know or whoever or me. We can try to set something up. The other question that Mike and I will kind of tag team on, how much capacity do the other towns have, other merger communities? And I just have this first one here. It's maybe a little hard to read, but it lists each town's capacity and then their population. You can see those for yourself. And then these little bar charts here. This shows the dark one is the total capacity per capita. We're over here on the far right. Then the blue, or middle column, we'll call it, is actual purchase or use per capita, total, that's including residential and commercial. And then the shorter one will be the residential use per capita. For us, you see it's 21. Most everybody's around 21 to 25.
Can I ask a question, Bobby? Mm-hmm. So I have a feeling that is Wendell's skewed in any way? Because they're going to still have a lot coming online. And is there any kind of projection of what it will be once all the build out is accomplished?
Not in here, but they still have sufficient capacity. They have a chart that we didn't include in here that has some future years. I don't remember if it had forecast capacity as far as used, but it had capacity.
Okay. Thank you.
I might help you with that. I ran some numbers, if you don't mind. I just on that particular one, what I was looking at was at the pad that cities had over capacity versus usage, and theirs was actually the lowest. It was around 63,500 gallons. Ours, as you can imagine, was the high. Well, no, we weren't the highest. We were second highest. But if that helps you any, that's all the pad they have left.
So am I reading this correct when I'm reading that our actual use is higher than all of these other towns?
Total use, yes. That's per capita. That's not total use, that's per capita. So we have some commercial users that use more, which kind of skews ours. But if you look at the residential pieces, it's really 22, 28, 25, 24, and 25, and we're 21.
I think I'm going to go clarify with the next slide.
Mike can get in that in a second.
Okay.
But does that sort of answer? You're looking at the middle column, right? When you're saying
Yeah, I was looking at the middle column.
Yeah, that's a total use per capita. So,
Okay. And that's mostly because we've got some big industry that's using water? Okay.
Okay, to answer your question in terms of
usage versus capacity. We currently use 546,983 gallons per day. That is based on the 2018 actual numbers, and that's broken up. 58% of that goes to non-residential uses, and 42%, give or take a percentage or two, depending upon the current building trends, will go towards residential. So we're not quite 50-50, but we're pretty close. In comparison, total we have a capacity of 2.2 million gallons per day. If you take a look at Gardner, they have 2.1 million gallons per day current usage. They also have a population of 28,731. Their ratios are slightly different than ours. So realistically, right now, if we're able to build out maximum for everything and capitalize on all of the water capacity, we would exceed or come close to approaching 30,000 residents plus the commercial operation that would be corresponding. That's current picture. Project down 30 years down the road, because as you may recall, some of the other charts, we were looking at 30-year trends in Apex and Holly Springs and Fuca were some of the fastest growing. We would, by 2050, we'll have 7.1 million gallons per day available if we continue on and not sell any back. If we do sell back, we would still have 6.9 million gallons per day. That difference is currently would translate to approximately 100,000 residents. We redid some of the projections. Past trends, over the past 30 years, we've grown less than 2% per year if you calculate the average for the full 30 years. We've approached 3 to 4%, and our trend lines would bring us around 6.5 to 7% growth rates. That's only for the next couple of years. If we hit 9%, where we'd have to be to actually max out our water for residential uses, over the next 30 years, we probably make national news on one of the consistently fastest growing communities in the United States. Very few communities are able to sustain that level of growth. I could tell you, my staff, it would have to quintuple just to deal with the building permits. So 100,000 gallons, if we were to sell that back, that would accommodate probably 91 acres. And that would be quarter-acre lot, residential, with roads and infrastructure. And that acreage, that average would also be an average versus each individual lot being a quarter acre. That translates to approximately 1,000 people. So the 100,000 gallons would translate to 1,000 residential usage. We also took a deeper look into the total developable area within town. We excluded anything that was wetlands. We excluded anything that was watershed, and came up to a total that maximum within Wake County that we could develop is 24,383 acres. This number does not take into consideration existing development. So things like GSK, Nemeko, 5-County Stadium, downtown, all of the residential neighborhoods are currently in that. So total, we have plenty of water, and we'll probably run out of land before we run out of water. So the next steps is we've researched this. The next step would be to work with Raleigh to prepare a draft merger agreement based on the agreed terms by both parties. And the question that we have for you tonight is there any apprehension to staff preparing a draft merger agreement for discussion at the October 5th, 2020 board meeting?
Let me speak first, if you don't mind. I did a lot of number crunching, and this whole thing is giving me a lot of heartburn, so I'm real honest about it. But I've come to the conclusion that there will come a day when some board, not this one, will say, boy, we wish we had that 100,000 gallons back. However, I think that is way down the road. So I've come personally to the conclusion that we can afford to give back that $100,000, 100,000 gallons, and help our citizens. Now, honestly, I've run every kind of number you can think of because it's really been a struggle for me on this, and I think all of y'all probably know that. So for what that's worth, I'll share that with you. Beyond that, I do have some questions on sewer. We've talked water, and we haven't really talked about wastewater. Mm-hmm. So I'll see if anybody else has any comments before we get into wastewater.
Sounds good.
I'd like to see your numbers sometime. Okay.
And a lot of them from this, you're welcome to take this number. What I did was I said if we keep it and grow it 3.5, I ran it out 20 years. And then I took our population and ran it out 20 years, 3% for a number of years, 4% for a number of years, 5% for a number of years. And then I also ran the numbers out if we do the return. All of my other calculations I don't have written down. I just use these numbers to do it and look at it, but you're welcome to have a copy of this. So anyway, all right. Any other comments, questions on water? No?
No, I'm interested in the sewer aspect.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, my question on sewer is that, and I asked, Joe and I had a conversation yesterday, so full disclosure on this. It seemed to me that we were talking about 300,000 gallons of sewer going back with 100,000 gallons of water. Well, water and sewer are pretty much one-on-one. Now, you have about a 2% loss from water coming in and then what goes to the sewer plant. So about 98% of your water goes back into the streams, if you will. And in our case, of course, some of that comes for reuse, but it still ends up there. So Joe explained to me that we actually have more capacity in sewer than the plant can actually produce. Did I get that right? Okay. So my question goes to this. What is the remaining capacity, and what is the remaining capacity that we have access to because we're selling sewer, well, we were, Raleigh is now, to Middlesex? And my belief or understanding is that not too long ago they sold more to Middlesex. So if that's being chopped off for, in this case, Middlesex, it could end up going somewhere else. But if it's chopped off, what does that leave us with? Are we putting ourselves in harm's way with that?
I apologize, I do not have the specific numbers. There's also some other factors that are involved with that. Joe is correct that we do have well over our necessary need for sewer allocation at this point in time.
Okay, that was not my question though. Well, it's part of it, but my question is, if we give up 300,000 gallons, what do we have left? Mm-hmm. And out of that, what do we have access to?
Yeah, I apologize, I do not have those numbers in front of me.
Because I believe what's going to happen is Middlesex is probably going to want even more at some point in the future as they continue to grow, because they have no other resource to use for sewer. Mm-hmm. Initially, we did, I think, 90,000 gallons a day. I don't know what it is now. I have no idea.
I don't recall off the top of my head.
So, anyway, that was my question.
Yeah, my main concern is that I don't want us having to dig pits in our backyard at some point.
Based on the current numbers, we, even projecting out 30 to 40 years, we will still have more than ample enough sewer capacity.
Okay, that's always been a question since that number has always been higher, so that's good to know.
And the other part of that is those ratios are constantly in flux, especially with energy, water conservatism and the new systems. When this water allocation agreement started, the water usage per day was calculated at almost double what it is now, for example.
Yeah, originally it was projected at 250 gallons a day, and when we went into the conservation some time ago with the drought, that came way back, and it's never gone back because people continue to try to conserve. The 20-year projection on growth gives us 4,161,000 if we give back the 100. If we don't, then the difference is 183,000.
Which I think the 6.6 for, if we did sell back the water and sewer, the 6.9, back to that slide.
Well, as I told you, I got comfortable with water, but I don't know anything about sewer.
Yeah, I double checked the 6.9. If we max out that for residential and maintaining the same ratios for residential to non-residential, we would have enough sewer capacity to accommodate that much water intake. And that would be approximately 82,000 people within the town of Zebulon.
Okay. Well, I've said my piece. My only questions have to go to sewer now. I've gotten comfortable with the other. And I should have done it before, and I'm sorry I didn't.
Nope, that's okay.
Yeah, we're focused on water. What do you think, folks? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, the question is, do you want them to go ahead and try to come up with something for us to look at next month, or do you want more information before you?
That's correct.
I would like to get this moving. So draft away as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you.
Yeah, with the sellback option, do you have an estimate on how much the monthly bills may drop?
They would go to the city of Raleigh
levels.
rates, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Bobby, but we pay more than double what city of Raleigh pays.
Okay, so it'd be about a 50% drop.
Correct.
Because we thought that was wrong.
I don't think we'll make anybody sad with that.
I think that people will be dancing in the streets.
Yeah.
I will be anyway. Do I need a permit for that?
All right.
Okay.
So this is one you might recall from last month. Average bill now for Zebulon is $114 for 3,100 gallons. The Raleigh bill is $44 for the same amount, so $70 less.
Okay, well, I believe the consensus of the board is to go ahead and try to draw something for us to look at. Is that everybody in agreement?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. That's it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the next two items then are closed session. We have two items on the closed session agenda. First, as permitted by NCGS 143-318.11A5 for the purpose of property acquisition, and then the second is 143-318.11A6 for the purpose of personnel discussion. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Make a motion, we go into closed session?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.